Someone cautiously asks Elroy what is happening to him, and after a short pause he answers with an uncertain sound, as if choosing his words and not wanting to reveal his thoughts right away. Meanwhile, the cart slowly rolls across the endless sands, and in the silence comes the remark that there really is nothing around except emptiness and the horizon. Afterwards, Elroy asks Yui how much time has passed since their departure, and she calmly replies that it has been almost 2 weeks since they left the kingdom of Norgard. Then he looks back at the landscape and thinks about the lifelessness of the place, and the maid next to him remarks that Ouroboros really does feel like the end of the world. A little later, one of the companions stretches and complains that she hasn't taken a bath for a long time, while a voice behind her asks her to wait at least a minute. Almost immediately after this, she reproaches her interlocutor for inappropriate words in front of Elroy-sama, and, folding her hands on her knees, sits up straight and restrained. Then the woman with short hair turns to Yuzuriha, reminding her that even as a guard and a member of the royal family, it is worth understanding the situation, and she silently remains sitting next to her on the bench. A moment later, one of the girls admits that something important is troubling her, and in response, the other clarifies whether it is really that serious, leaning back freely and without unnecessary tension. Meanwhile, Elroy firmly says that he cannot return to the luxurious life of the capital, and the girl next to him waves off someone's words, after which both companions fall silent again. After this, one of them admits that she herself does not want to go back, and her words find silent agreement with her interlocutor. As the carriage travels under the canopy, someone reflects on the strength of the young master, who is only 12 years old, and thinks bitterly about how awkward he will look among the other princes of the capital. Elroy then explains that if they had stayed in the capital, they would not have lived even a few lifetimes, whereas here, at the edge of the world, they have the opportunity to breathe freely. Meanwhile, a lone horse-drawn carriage moves across the deserted plain, and thoughts of the endless possibilities hidden in this pure, untouched land sound in the mind. A little later, the girl in the attire of a servant tells her master that he is capable of turning these places into a great country, and he, lying down, admits that he's beginning to get tired of the road. Soon, Elroy notices something important, and Yorisuke mentions a report from 3 years ago that spoke of a village nearby. After this, Elroy asks Yohane what he sees, and he peers into the distance, not taking his eyes off. Yohane warns that the information from the old report should not be underestimated, and Elroy, standing by the window, listens in, after which the scene's gaze shifts to the distant silhouette of the village and someone's reaction to it. Soon they stop in front of a wooden gate, and one of the companions notices that this is Languedoc, the first colony of Ouroboros. Then Galliera dreamily says that it would be wonderful to find hot springs here, and the other girl jokes that she only talks about them, after which they both decide to look around. Eventually, one of them quietly tells the owner that it is surprisingly quiet here, and together they look out over the peaceful village with its simple houses and bare trees. People gather at one of the houses, and among them a question is heard about whether what is happening seems strange, after which a young man sharply calls out to a girl in a maid's outfit and orders her to stop. Elroy then calmly apologizes, but in response he hears a sharp question about what he wants, and he says nothing, maintaining an outward calm and collected appearance. After this, the bearded man furiously warns that no one should dare touch Sasha, declaring that he will not spare even his own if anyone crosses the line. Then another villager, in despair, demands that Goran answer whether he is really ready to turn his own daughter into the undead and let the village perish in order to save her. Goran, after a pause, firmly declares that he has no intention of abandoning the settlement, and especially Sasha, showing determination through which inner doubt still breaks through. The old man then warns Goran that if he becomes undead, the village will be completely destroyed, and these words make him listen carefully and silently to the arguments. After this, the young warrior with the sword apologizes for his actions, explaining that he is doing this for the good of all the inhabitants, and behind him stands motionless a serious, fair-haired companion. Meanwhile, Yohane, sweating from the tension, offers to take control of the situation, making it clear that he is ready to act to the end. Elroy then confidently declares his intention to cleanse the curse of the undead, while Yorisuke, Yohane, and 2 companions stand behind him, watching closely as events unfold. Elroy then addresses the assembled group and asks if it is possible to purify while standing right in the middle of the village crowd and keeping one's eyes on the target. After this, the fair-haired guy with a bat in his hands cautiously asks if they are strangers, clearly doubting their origin. Elroy says without hesitation that he can heal the girl, but the old man nearby does not believe what he heard and, with obvious distrust, doubts the boy's words. Then one of the men hurriedly demands that Goran look at his daughter immediately, reproaching him for already understanding everything, promising to apologize later, but not hiding his irritation. Meanwhile, someone calls out to a man out of frame, another mentions Norgard with disbelief, and the young swordsman asks the boy to wait while he calmly leaves. After this, the determined maid warns everyone to carefully consider their next step and emphasizes that her master will deal with what is happening himself. The girl then urges them not to miss the opportunity while Elroy and another man stand by the wall, at which point the bearded villager is struck by something unexpected, causing him to react violently. The man then quickly calms Sasha down, assuring her that everything will be fine, and she, weakened and disoriented, asks with difficulty whether it is really her father in front of her. Elroy concentrates at this point, then suddenly thrusts his hand forward, and the air fills with a sharp crack of power. He then uses the flame purification technique, creating swirling flames between himself and Yohane, who watches the process closely from the sidelines. At the end, one of the men clenches his teeth, breaking into a muffled curse as sweat runs down his face, emphasizing the intensity and heaviness of the moment. The man quickly warns that Sasha has not yet become undead and demands that the source of the curse be extinguished immediately, while the other listens to these words without interfering. Then one of the villagers reaches out to the maid, but she sternly stops him, declaring that she will not allow him to touch her master, and immediately begins to explain the reason for such behavior. After this, the man and the maid find themselves inside a wooden house, where he calmly says that the purification is already complete and the danger has passed. Then Elroy clarifies that another 5 minutes of waiting would be fatal, and at that moment, the bearded father, overwhelmed with emotion, breaks down and calls Sasha by name. Elroy then silently listens to the man's gratitude for saving his daughter, and the man offers to fulfill any wish as a token of his gratitude. In response, Elroy simply explains that helping his dear subjects is a natural act for him. After this, he calls himself the Grand Duke of Ouroboros and says that he has arrived to rule these lands, which is why the interlocutor asks again, amazed, about his subjects. Meanwhile, someone asks if Norgard is part of the royal family, and another one is outraged, calling what is happening insolence. The girl adds that the curse of the undead cannot be simply burned away, and the young companion notes with genuine admiration how impressive his master is. The focus then shifts to a dilapidated house among the trees, after which a cup of coffee is placed on the table, and thanks are heard in the background for saving Sasha and the entire village. A moment later, the older man addresses Elroy respectfully, who calmly replies that caring for his subjects is a feudal lord's duty, while the maid stands silently by. The young man adds that in these harsh lands this is especially important, and the old man nods in agreement, accepting his words. From the outside, the village appears poor and depleted, and quiet voices explain that the inhabitants live in constant fear of monsters and the undead, barely making ends meet. After this, Elroy puts the cup on the table and says that he understands that such a life will soon end, to which the elder asks what he means and hears the answer about the coming changes. Elroy then confidently declares that he will make Ouroboros a land that will be the envy of all. Later, the boy descends a dark spiral staircase with a lantern and reflects on how, at the age of 5, the memories of his past life return to him. Below stands a dark-haired man, realizing that in a past life he was an ordinary Japanese man and owned a small restaurant. After this, Elroy wonders why he was destined to be reborn in this world, looking at the light with a thoughtful expression. He then finds himself in front of massive chain doors, opens them with a key, and thus reveals himself as the 5th prince of the Kingdom of Norgard. At the end, Elroy stands in a huge circular library with a lantern in his hand and realizes that this is where his previous understanding of the world ends. Elroy reflects that everything always happened the same way, looking through the dark vertical bars, after which he turns away in a dim room filled with books, where meanwhile a shadow approaches him with a weapon in his hand. He then barely avoids a blow from a black silhouette and immediately responds with a sharp lunge, causing papers to scatter across the floor and an open book to fall, increasing the tension of the fight. Afterwards, Elroy winces as something sharp grazes the side of his head, and in that moment it becomes clear that a protruding nail is always driven deeper once it is exposed. At that time, he still does not realize that the king allowed only direct heirs into the forbidden library, while a dangerous figure continues to loom in the shadows nearby. Meanwhile, the hidden enemy himself does not understand the meaning and reason for what is happening, while a dense wave of power flares up around him, emphasizing the confusion and tension of the moment. Bleeding and shocked, the young man thinks about his peculiarity and abnormal luck in life. Threatening situations, which at that moment connected him with an unconscious girl named Yui, around whom there were traces of blood. After this, the girl confidently lowers herself down in front of the sitting and wounded Elroy, quietly grins and looks down at him while he cannot take his eyes off her. Then the pale woman gently lifts the chin of the dark-haired gentleman, whose cheeks are wet with tears, and calls him her dear master with an almost affectionate intonation. The masked figure then mentions the release agreement, and the woman turns her gaze to the man, who unhesitatingly declares that he will take care of the person in question himself. At that same moment, the hooded observer freezes as his own shadow separates from his feet and rises, causing him to let out an involuntary cry of disbelief. The masked, wide-eyed character then finds himself engulfed in dark, clawed tentacles that tighten around him, leaving no room to escape. Elroy, wounded and still stunned, hears a promise to stay by his side for life, and the narrative notes that this is how he met Yui, his servant and familiar. After this, the thought returns to the truth that the strong hawk hides its claws, and this truth echoes the sight of a majestic castle on the horizon. Elroy then recalls how he once believed himself invulnerable thanks to his abilities, but nearly fell at the hands of an assassin after realizing he had chosen the wrong path. Over time, he comes to the conclusion that his attempts to build alliances at court and increase his political weight have turned his gift into a burden rather than an advantage. After this, Elroy stands by the chair and realizes that as rumors about the child prodigy spread, more and more of his half-siblings begin to follow his every move. Meanwhile, he calmly drinks his tea, thinking about the constant threat of assassination, and briefly wonders if the food is poisoned as he takes another sip. In the spring of her freshman year, a girl furiously accuses Elroy of attempted murder, screaming his name as he stands silently before her outside a large building. Elroy later realizes that due to his mother's lowly origins, he did not have a powerful family capable of standing up for him. In conclusion, the elderly man with the crown reveals that he himself was falsely accused of murdering the queen and became the last hope, forced to wait for the future only because of rumors of extraordinary talent. Elroy stands silently behind bars and thinks about how he has lost the trust of his own father, the king, and this feeling turns out to be heavier than any chains. Then, crouched alone against a cracked stone wall, he realizes that the father who protected him as a child is no longer around, and yet there remains the small comfort that he can now rely only on himself. After this, the woman steps forward with a warm smile and confidently explains to her dark-haired interlocutor that during the magical exercises, her sister Margarita and Cornelia, the second prince's fiancé, were in her room, thereby confirming the alibi. Meanwhile, the king, sitting on the throne, makes a cold decision that the kneeling youth can no longer remain in the palace. The day after his release, Elroy clearly realizes that his exile was not a mercy, but a disguised death sentence under the title of Grand Duke of Ouroboros. Then the day of departure arrives, and Elroy stands motionless next to the covered wagon, lost in thoughts of a future that can no longer be changed. At this time, Robin accompanies the narrator. Uncle Johann stands nearby, and Yui's familiar looks on with a soft, encouraging smile. After this, the girl quietly consoles Elroy, saying that he is not guilty of anything, and he accepts her words silently, not finding the strength to object. Then the young man calms his sister Margarita, asking her not to worry, and she replies that thanks to him her life has changed, adding that there is nothing more disgusting than male envy. A little later, another girl firmly states that Elroy is still a child and too young to be sent away like that. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl smiles awkwardly and remarks that a lady should not speak like that in the presence of Sister Cornelia, the second prince's fiancée and Margarita's relative, who stands nearby with her arms crossed. After this, one woman sincerely thanks him for the kindness shown to her, despite her humble origin, while the other listens to what is said with a concentrated expression. The two then exchange puzzled glances, and one of them notes that the first and second princes are becoming increasingly irritated. The woman then introduces Elroy to her guard, Yuzuriha, who remains slightly behind, maintaining calm and silent readiness. Almost immediately, Yurusu confidently declares that she is ready to be used if necessary, and Elroy takes these words in stride as her skills in shooting and wind magic are explained nearby. The camera then lingers on the confident face of the girl, who claims that the said warrior is stronger than any ordinary knight, and the shorter figure adds that he will introduce them now. After this, the confident woman introduces herself as the mercenary Galliera and bluntly states that she is ready to do anything for payment, while the other girl enthusiastically states her name. Elroy responds with gratitude, and someone nearby doesn't hide their surprise, their eyes wide at the unexpected turn of events. Then he notices a girl calmly approaching him, and unexpectedly for himself he blushes, becoming confused for a moment. Finally, Elroy explains that Ouroboros is a distant, almost no-man's land, forgotten, and asks if she is ready to accept such a fate, while two women nearby listen intently to his words. The work of a mercenary gradually becomes habitual, and one of the companions calmly assures of this, while the other, without hesitation, promises to go anywhere for the sake of the prince's life, maintaining a cold determination. Hearing this, Elroy feels relieved and, after a short pause, holds out a tiny object as a sign of gratitude, causing the girl next to him to immediately ask what it is. After this, he demonstrates a magical artifact that can hide one's appearance when touched, allowing the owner to disappear from view. Elroy then explains that the item cannot be seen, but can be felt, so it must be handled with care, and the woman next to him is surprised at how quickly he got it. Meanwhile, he adds that, in the worst case, he was going to use the artifact to escape from prison, and both listeners involuntarily exchange glances, amazed by such a calculation. A little later, two girls laugh, discussing that such a thing would be useful for them to escape, but a young man standing nearby immediately asks them not to turn it into a joke. After this, she clarifies whether he will be in touch regularly, and mentions that she left a hawk to deliver messages to Yuzuriha. Then one of the girls animatedly asks to bring a souvenir not only for her sister Margarita, but also for herself, adding this almost demandingly. The young man then waves goodbye, saying that he is going on his way and wishing his sisters to take care of themselves as they silently watch him go. So Elroy, standing in a cart with his hand raised, begins his legend at the age of 12, with a calm and open landscape spreading out around him. After this, he confidently declares that he intends to show his true strength, and there is not a shadow of doubt in these words. The leaf falls slowly in front of him. Elroy looks forward with an even expression, and a quiet voice addresses him, calling him Lord. For a moment, his gaze becomes distant, and the girl in the maid's clothes carefully asks what is troubling him. Elroy then recalls being hunted in the palace and notes that he no longer needs to hold back here, to which Yoroseki responds with a knowing smile and a quiet chuckle. Closing his eyes, he calmly says that this time he will not make mistakes, as if reinforcing his own decision. Under the bright moon, one suggests returning to the headman's house because it's getting cold, the other agrees, and on the way they discuss how they will begin to cultivate the fields tomorrow, noting the good mood of the owner. Elroy supports this idea and suggests starting with a soil test, while an older man stands nearby, and together they look out over the barren plain with mountains in the distance. He then asks the old man for his opinion and explains that the earth is dead due to excess salt and lack of microorganisms. In response, the elderly interlocutor reports that he has already turned the entire area into fertile soil, and Elroy is surprised, and then hears the assurance that the result will become obvious after sowing and a few days of waiting. Finally, someone moves their sleeve, and the old man wonders with slight anxiety where they will get the seeds for future sowing. Elroy lists each vegetable he has in stock, and the older man doesn't hide his disbelief, amazed at how the prince managed to gather so much food. After this, Elroy smiles awkwardly and admits that previously, for him, the problem of feeding himself was particularly acute and was far from simple. He then accepts the old man's words and sincerely praises his ability to survive on a barren land with tiny fields, noting that it requires a lot of resilience. Then Elroy calmly says that this is the end of the suffering, and the bald man next to him just sniffs, silently agreeing. Elroy then places his palm on the ground and suggests strengthening the defense, after which a massive earthen wall erupts in front of everyone with a roar. For a moment, the two men stand frozen in amazement. Then the woman with the tail taps the hard surface, noting its strength, while the dark-haired companion watches intently. After this, Elroy explains that even a demon boar running at full speed will not be able to move this barrier, and Yoroseki notes with relief that he can now work without constant fear. Meanwhile, the older man raises his hands and bursts into tears, and the younger man quickly asks him to raise his head, assuring him that he will no longer have to live in anticipation of crop failure. One of the companions squeezes the other's hand tighter, reflecting on the fact that the village of Langdok has endured far more severe trials than it seemed at first glance. In a dimly lit room, a figure kneels by the bed, recalling years of hard work that bore no fruit, and shadows of horror, hunger, and disease loom in his mind. After this, he clearly understands that the days of hopelessness have come to an end, and he firmly decides to break this circle by changing the future. Elroy recalls that about 2 years ago, a messenger told him about a newly founded village, and the old man added that the water and soil there were much better than the local ones. The old man then explains that the area was inhabited by monsters and half-humans, and behind him stands a massive figure in a horned helmet, standing silently. Someone suggests that the half-humans could be orcs, but his companion immediately corrects him, assuring him that they are definitely not orcs, but most likely dwarves. Hearing this, Elroy perks up and enthusiastically says that this is great news, suggesting that they not hesitate to help the two remaining villages. After this, the young man quickly turns to the elderly monk with a request for help, expressing in advance his deep gratitude for his consent. Elroy squeezes the elder's hands tightly and promises to save his people if possible, and the elder, touched, thanks him, to which Elroy replies that there is nothing special about it. The dark-haired companion then explains that the path further north through Mount Alrath should lead them to their goal, and the other immediately agrees to go there without delay. The old man adds with concern that beyond Mount Alrath, there are lands that none of the villagers have seen. In conclusion, Elroy calmly reassures his companion, saying that he and Yui will explore everything themselves, not allowing fear to stop their path. Elroy explains that before crossing the mountain, the surrounding area must be completely cleared of monsters, and the area of Go-Wan's influence must be expanded, and in response, the interlocutor is involuntarily surprised, realizing that it was the monsters that made development impossible all this time. After this, one of the men nods reservedly, and the other adds that, with the creatures nearby gone, the village will be able to focus solely on farming, while the other two listen without interfering. The bearded man then offers to take over the settlement's defense for a while the long-haired companion clarifies that security should be reduced to a minimum, sending the remaining residents to work in the fields. Elroy notices the old man's doubt and points out that he probably doesn't believe in the ability of a child and a woman to resist monsters. Then he gently invites them to go with him the next day to see everything in person, but the other person shyly refuses, unable to find the words for a clear explanation. After a short pause, Elroy asks not to overexert herself, and the man cautiously asks if he can join in, to which the young lord reminds him that his daughter has not yet recovered. Meanwhile, another resident doubts whether the two of them are enough, but Elroy's companion confidently replies that it is enough, adding that the main thing is to stop holding back one's own capabilities. Elroy then warns of the large number of goblins in the area and calmly advises not to take them as a serious threat. The bearded man then explains that these creatures come to steal the crops as soon as the shoots appear, so they have to be constantly cut down, and the young listener notes that due to the speed of reproduction, it seems as if there is no end to them. At that moment, an ominous roar is heard from ahead, and the bearded man hastily warns Elroy that the enemies are calling for reinforcements and must be destroyed before a full-fledged pack is formed. Elroy, without changing his tone, replies that in this case the task becomes easier, since the opponents gathered together require less effort. After this, he confidently warns not to underestimate his cheating ability and decisively stretches his arms forward. Then Elroy lets out a calm breath, and the bearded companion, amazed by what he saw, asks what exactly just happened. Meanwhile, one of the goblins looks at his own hand in bewilderment, noticing strange clots, and mutters that this is the first time he has encountered something like this, although it turns out that goblins also have platelets. It then becomes clear that mana was used against them to intentionally cause thrombosis in the monsters' heads, causing the observer to experience outright shock. Finally, Elroy explains that at the age of 8, they tried to poison him in the royal palace, and it was then that he learned not only to analyze poisons, but also to interfere with their effects, making even such knowledge work against his enemies.